Awesome, baby! Awesome, baby!
So yes, NBA Jam. One of the handful of sports games I would actually play.
Awesome, baby! Awesome, baby! Slam Jam, baby!
So, for those who aren't in know, NBA Jam, published by Acclaim, is a more arcadey take of basketball. It starts off with a two-on-two style round. They would, of course, later add, a third team member, and you would slowly progress on. But we are here today to focus on the Xbox version and ask the key pinnacle question of, does it retain the same arcadey goodness that the previous versions did? Previous being Super Nintendo and Genesis. Now, this is a pivotal question because A, this came out right around the time when arcades started dying, so NBA Jam was kind of in danger, I guess, of losing its identity. Plus, not to mention, the arcade style of game in general was dying out. So, again, is it a proper, just as good homage / tribute to the past as it is a game in its own right? First off, we're going to have to delve into those graphics because, well, it's on the Xbox. It's on the OG Xbox. Surely it would have better graphics. And these graphics are great because they're 3D and they're not trying to do this whole hyper-realistic thing. We're keeping the spirit of the arcade in that regard because, I mean, come on, it's fun, It won't be like these later NBA games where everything has to be hyper-realistic. So, we're keeping it fun, we're keeping it loose, doing a good job there. And it maintains the arcadey charm of the early games with some of the bombastic presentation. Sometimes makes you feel like you're watching a basketball game being played out in virtual reality on the real television. These sports graphics, and especially, are pretty authentic for the time. Now, as for the audio, nothing to complain about here in terms of sound effects. Everything is great. I mean, hoops, balls bouncing. They recorded real samples for probably all the games, but the thing of it is, we gotta talk about that music. Now, the SNES game, if you ask me, has a legendary opening theme. It's about as 80s as it gets. And the Genesis version comprises of a heavily stomped down and squished version of that theme. So, what did they do for this? Well, they recruited the one and only Funkadelic. Now, I was initially a little worried about this because I was worried that I had to mute the audio during gameplay, but thankfully, Funkadelic comes through with next to nothing. Because the Funkadelic track that you read about on the box, this unique soundtrack by Funkadelic, is only like a basic loop and one instrument. Heck of a job there, George. I actually had nothing to worry about. The only thing I'm going to have to do is cut around the hip-hop stingers whenever you get a especially great, score, like a hoop or something. They'll do like they do in the official basketball games and do like a hip-hop stinger for 5 seconds or whatever. So the soundtrack isn't as impressive as the SNES version. Probably better than the Genesis version because I'm a SNES sound guy. I can appreciate the Genesis sound chip when it's used properly, but yeah. Vastly inferior to the SNES version. This brings us on to gameplay. Because there's no real story mode again with these, we'll have to save that for a second though, because there is a form of progression to talk about. Now, gameplay is actually faithfully preserved in this, which is fantastic. It was the one thing I was worried about, because back in ye old times with the SNES, I remember just having fun not knowing what's going on the screen, just pressing buttons, and hopefully I can make a basket from like the half line. But the thing of it is I had that same amount of fun in the Xbox version too, so it passed. I had the same type of fun making freaking 3-pointers from the half line as I did in the SNES version. So gameplay, you know, you can pass, you can run, it has a turbo button like the SNES and Genesis versions did. You know, all in all, it was a faithful adaptation to the original series, so it does pass that arcadey feel. And not to mention some of these ridiculous shot presentations. Where like your or the other team's guy is on fire and like they can leap 20 feet in the air to make a basket. If you ask me, we need more of that. The thing that was amplified in this OG Xbox version is the fact that it's zany. It's more zany than the old SNES and Genesis versions, and for that, it gets props, baby. Now, I recently looked it up, and there's, you know, a 360 and a PS3 version of NBA Jam 2, so we're going to have to cover those when we find them. Back to that progression I was alluding to earlier. Yes, there is progression. Now, for all you old people in the YouTube audience, you know what the progression was for the SNES and Genesis versions. It was fodder. It was backup for whenever you got to smack talk your friends and say like, well, I won more games than you did and I can prove it, because there was actually a really nice record screen in the game and it stores everything. In the OG Xbox version though, there's actual meaningful progression within the game. You can create a character, and let me talk about this create a character mode for a minute. This create a character mode from 2000s, the early 2000s, is better than NBA 2K21. We're 20 years down the line, and the people back in the past had a better version of create a character than the new ones. Anyway, the thing of it is whenever you play games, whether you win or lose, you literally get points for style. So the more times your team is on fire, the more awesome shots that you do with your turbo combos, the more style points you get, which go into your create a character mode. And whenever you build your character, he's a total noob. Like, if you build a character based on the starting amount of, I think they call them NBA points or jam points. Yeah, jam points. Whenever you build a character with the starting off amount of jam points, your character's a total noob, you know? Like, he's gonna be this little scrawny 5'3" guy that can barely make a basket from the free throw line. But as you play as the pros, like back in the old times, you accrue these jam points so that you can eventually make your character as good as the pros, which I hope to be one day. You know, as good as the pros. But anyway, NBA Jam. Is it faithful to its roots? Oh, you bet it is. As a matter of fact, it gets more firmly entrenched in the roots with the zany, arcadey fun that I have come to know. Is it worth picking up? Yes, definitely. It belongs in the small sports game collection that I have. As a matter of fact, I think this is my sports game collection.